With that, we're going to turn our attention to energy and programs at the national level. And to do that, I'd like for you to join me in welcoming the Executive Director of Economic Development Partnership for North Carolina, Mr. Christopher Chung.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. This is on? All right, very good. I am the setup act, if you will, for a really insightful conversation that we're going to have here in just a few minutes with the president of Duke Energy North Carolina, Kendal Bowman. But to do that, I thought a couple of comments would be in order to help you understand how energy ties into the economic development issues that we face as the state's economic development organization. If you don't know anything about us today, the real quick takeaway is we do a number of things on behalf of the state of North Carolina that are really designed to increase the economic well-being and quality of life for the now 11 million people who call this home. Whether you were born and raised here and you've lived here your whole life, or whether you're someone like me who transplanted here about a decade ago, those 11 million people are who we get up to go to work for every single day. And we do a lot of different things in the name of economic development. Everything from trying to promote the state as a tourism destination to get people to come visit and spend money, especially in a place like Western North Carolina, which could really use that infusion of economic activity right now. We do things like help manufacturers to export more of their products overseas in hopes that those companies will keep growing their sales and their customers and their revenues and expand right back here in North Carolina to meet that new demand. And of course, a lot of what we are known best for is our work as the tip of the spear trying to recruit companies and industries in from outside the state. In fact, that's oftentimes what people think of when they think of economic development. As someone who's been in this profession nearly 3 decades, there's a whole lot more that goes into economic development, but the shorthand term of economic development for a lot of people tends to be that visual of a new company that's breaking ground or cutting the ribbon on a brand new facility that they've decided to put in a state, create a bunch of jobs, make a lot of investment, and that's what most people think of. It's not incorrect, it's perhaps just not exhaustive of everything that goes on in economic development. But it's really that part of economic development, that effort to recruit companies in from outside the state, that dovetails the most with energy as a hot topic today. And that's why I'm really excited to be part of the program this morning, but most importantly to be able to help talk with Kendal and get her to share some of the thoughts from Duke Energy's perspective around this very important issue. So I have just 2 slides to illustrate the point for you, and if this works. So as I said, I have this visual in my head that when I want people to understand what economic development is, and I know that they're thinking that it's about recruiting companies in from outside the state, to me, that visual has always been, since I got into this profession back in 1997, it's a bunch of strangers standing in the middle of an empty field. Because in my mind, if you drive by this scene anywhere in North Carolina or frankly anywhere across the country, chances are these group of strangers are probably there in the context of an economic development opportunity. They're taking a look at that site, at that community, at that region, trying to figure out, is this the right place for our company to invest $10 million or $100 million or $1 billion or even more than that to bet the future of our enterprise or our company on this specific piece of dirt that we are looking at this moment. And you can imagine when companies are making this decision around where they want to go, how they optimize the best possible location for their future growth, there are a lot of variables that they have to think about in order to reach what they think is the best possible decision for their companies. So let's do a little audience participation. What are some of the many factors that you can imagine a company cares about when they're standing in that field thinking about that site or about that community or even that state as a place to do business? There are probably no wrong answers, but let's give it a try. All right.
Quality of life.
Quality of life. What else? Transportation. What else? Taxes. Yep, great. What else? Workforce. That's great. Education. Also correct. No wrong answers so far. Anyone want to break that streak? Energy. Absolutely. Broadband. Okay, that's all good. All of those things matter, and they matter in differing degrees to differing companies. You can imagine for a company that's going to perhaps be hiring a bunch of software development engineers, perhaps something like quality of life might matter more because they might be recruiting more of their people in from outside the community to live in that part of the state to fill those jobs. Whereas something like advanced manufacturing Probably going to be a lot more sensitive to things like transportation and logistics, and certainly power. The point being that in the past couple of years, and again, I only have the benefit of having been in this line of work for about 27, 28 years, but more so than at any point in that more than quarter century of doing this type of work across 3 pretty industrial states in this country. Ohio is where I got my start. It's where I'm from originally, spent a number of years in Missouri, and I've been here in North Carolina for the past decade. The past couple years, it's been, I think that worked, much more about power. And that has a lot to do with the mix of economic development projects that states like North Carolina are competing for every day. Whether that is in the process of attracting a company that's in something like a large data center that generates, that does generative artificial intelligence, whether that's in the context of a company that's going to be making batteries for hybrid or battery electric vehicles, whether that's in the context of a company that's manufacturing some new advanced pharmaceutical product that will help address the human health condition, whatever those contexts are, the appetite for power has gone up tremendously, and the importance of this very critical site selection factor as companies decide where that optimal piece of dirt, where that best location is for them, has risen dramatically in the past couple of years. I would say that even if I were standing up on this stage as short as 5 years ago, well, I probably wouldn't be up here 5 years ago, we're in the middle of COVID, so we probably wouldn't have been all in a room together. But if I were standing in front of you 5 years ago, I probably would not have told you that power was at the top of the list. I think workforce certainly would have been one of those major issues, and that continues to be a really, really important factor for most kinds of companies. But I'd say relative to all of those other inputs and those criteria that you all provided in the audience participation part, power, I'd say, is the one factor that has risen in relative importance compared to just about everything else. And I think a lot of that has to do with the kinds of companies and industries that have been looking at where they're going to locate and expand in the future. Again, whether that is advanced manufacturing in the clean energy or automotive or electrification space, whether that is something like data centers, which are, as you've already heard this morning, huge consumers of energy at levels that I don't think we've ever really seen in modern industrial society. In fact, generative AI is actually how I got these 2 visuals. I just put that prompt in there, so I'm probably guilty for causing this to be even worse, but I just gave it a prompt to say, picture a bunch of strangers in a field, picture a bunch of strangers in the field where electricity really matters, and these are the visuals you got. So if you leave here with 2 images from just what I'm talking about today, before we bring Kendal up here on stage, it's that yes, workforce, transportation, cost of living, quality of life, taxes, incentives, all of those things matter. What really has changed in these past couple years especially is the relative importance of power, whether we have enough of it, whether it's reliable enough, affordably priced enough, and is generated using the right set of inputs. Those things have become much more consequential in our ability to attract and expand industry here in the state. And I think that's what's made it such a fascinating time, and I think that's what makes it such a timely topic for Sarah and her team to explore at this year's Emerging Issues Forum. So without further ado, let's get to the main star of the next half hour or so here. We're going to bring up Kendal Bowman from Duke Energy, North Carolina, who's going to share some thoughts on how did we get here and what's the road ahead look like as we try to solve for this very important factor. So please welcome Kendal Bowman. All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
We'll start off with something, a good level set question about energy in economic development. I have the couple of visuals that I showed, but if there's like one takeaway that you want folks in this room to understand about what you all are trying to do with respect to energy needs in North Carolina, I'd love for you to tell the group what you want them to leave with better knowledge of today.
Well, first, before I do that, Chris, I want to thank you and your leadership and all the great things that you and your team have done for the state of North Carolina. We have witnessed over the past decade phenomenal economic development, and I think in large part that is due to you, Chris. So first I wanted to thank you for that. So I will say we are at an important point in Duke Energy's 125-year history. I've been in the energy industry for 26 years, all of which at an energy company, started at Carolina Power and Light back in the day. Our country is facing an unprecedented challenge for energy demand. We've not seen anything like this probably since the early 1900s when Duke Power was created to power the textile boom that happened in the Carolinas. So we're at that crossroads right now, and I think the decisions that we make in this point in time are going to shape the economic vitality for the communities and customers in North Carolina. So that's kind of my takeaway. We're at a crossroads now, and we need to make important decisions.
Sure.
That are going to serve us for decades to come.
Right. Then I know from being in the economic development side, which we get exposed to these issues, it really feels like the past, I'd call it the past 2.5 years especially, we've seen that power factor really rise in importance like I just talked about. How did we get there, I think is helpful for this audience to understand. What did things look like before that, and how did we get so quickly to this point where all of a sudden power is top of mind for so many companies, so many states, so many utilities? Like, how are we going to meet this unprecedented level of demand?
Yeah, so 5 years ago in the Carolinas, we were seeing pretty flat load growth, maybe 0.2%. And it was flat. And probably the past 2 or 3 years, it has ballooned exponentially, really in the past 2 years. Previously, we would have an economic development, a large industry, for example, would come and it would be 5 megawatts. And we would think that was huge. We would actually have a party. We signed a 5 megawatt load today. Now we're having customers come and they're looking for 500 megawatts or a gigawatt of power. And to put it in perspective, because not everybody lives in megawatts and gigawatts on a day-to-day basis, 1 gigawatt is about the size of the Sharon Harris nuclear plant. If you fly to RDU, you can see the steam coming out of the cooling tower there. That is about 1.1 gigawatts of power. So it is just really unprecedented that we're seeing customers out there that need that amount of energy to meet their load. And it's a different type of load. It is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that they need this energy. And so we've got to build the infrastructure in order to serve this. And it's coming from not just data centers, cloud computing, artificial intelligence. It's coming from a lot of different sectors. If you think about the onshoring, you think about battery manufacturing, chips and sciences, biopharma. It's all of these that are growing. I will also say in the Carolinas, one of the things, you mentioned the population in North Carolina, we are seeing phenomenal population growth in our state. Everybody has recognized how great North Carolina is. Everybody wants to move here. All of the wonderful things that we've got going on, our great universities, our great history, the beaches, the mountains, everybody wants to be here. Just for the electric industry, I think over the past 2 years, we have connected more than 200,000 new customers. And when I say customers, I'm meaning a meter. That doesn't necessarily mean the number of people. Right. So we currently serve 3.7 million customers, and again, that's meters in the state of North Carolina across 83 counties. And it is not just the economic growth that we're seeing, but it's the population as well. So times are really changing. A lot of people are asking, is this huge growth really there? I think that it is.
Yeah.
I think that it is, and I think people want to be here in the Carolinas.
So you've got this really unprecedented level of demand that's coming from a convergence of different things. Like you said, there's been a focus, and I think that focus has stayed on regardless of administrations, is bring more manufacturing back here in the United States, especially in these sectors that happen to be big energy consumers, semiconductor manufacturing or battery production. You've got generative AI now feeding into this and the massive consumption. So clearly the demand's there. We know from the companies that we talk to and work together on trying to attract here, cost is an issue. But we also know that the public has expectations of producing this power in a way that's environmentally responsible. So how does a company like Duke Energy thread the needle on things like cost, supply, environmental responsibility, sustainability. These are a lot of different demands to balance both internally and externally. I'd love for you to tell everyone, how do you guys go about thinking about that?
Well, Chris, you're exactly right. And at the center of our business strategy is customer focus. And we have to deliver reliable, increasingly clean, and affordable energy to our customers. That's our state mandate, and that's what we have to do, and that's what we're focused on. And really, I think we're focused on it in three ways. The first is we're modernizing our fleet of resources. So we are retiring coal. We are looking at, we already are number 4 in the nation for solar interconnections here in North Carolina, but we're looking at adding probably 10 gigawatts, and remember my gigawatt analogy, of renewables in the next several years. We're also looking at adding new, cleaner natural gas that's hydrogen capable, and we're also looking at deploying farther out into the future new nuclear and advanced technologies. So we're looking at trying to improve that generation fleet, and we're also, the second prong is hardening the grid. So we've got to make significant upgrades to our transmission and distribution lines. We're building in resiliency, because in North Carolina we face a lot of storms, hurricanes, so we're really trying to ensure that we have a resilient system. We're also putting in place smart technologies that do self-healing and can reduce the frequency of outages, but also the duration of outages. Then the third prong is really deploying innovative, I'm going to call it customer programs and new technologies. So we're developing customer programs that really incent customers to use less energy.
Okay.
Think of maybe real-time pricing tariffs. So if you turned that dishwasher on at 3 in the afternoon, it would cost a whole lot more energy than if you waited till 9 p.m. at night.
Sure.
So we're really trying to develop these kind of innovative ways to incent people to use less energy, particularly at peak periods of time. And so these are really some of the best tools we have to ensure that the power is reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean.
Yeah.
We also, in the state of North Carolina, file a resource plan every 2 years with the Utilities Commission. And the benefit of that is the commission looks at these plans, they approve the plans, and they seek input from the public. So it's a very open process. And the nice thing is we have the ability to check and adjust every 2 years to accommodate whether it's the price of resources or fuel, the components, or to implement new state and federal policies.
Yeah. So how does it look in other states? I mean, you talk to, of course, your counterparts that are running Duke Energy in South Carolina or Ohio or Indiana or Florida, but then you also probably see your peers from other utility companies around the country. Are we all facing the same issue as other states are? Like, how are we approaching it in a way that gives you confidence that we can be better here in North Carolina and eke out some competitive edge against other states that we go up against?
So I think we're in a fantastic position in the state of North Carolina. We've been able to be below the national average in our energy rates for many decades, and I think that's served us very well. We'd like to be able to continue that going forward, and I think that's helped attract businesses. The other thing is I think North Carolina has put in place some great policies. I think back to the clean smokestacks legislation back in the early 2000s, where the state wanted to have cleaner air, and so we put the smokestacks at our coal facilities to really clean out the particulate matters. Also, I think back to 2007 with Senate Bill 3 that really put in place renewables and a focus for North Carolina on renewables. And then I harken back to more recently in 2021, House Bill 951, where we have a net zero carbon goal by 2050. I think the policies of North Carolina have attracted businesses, and Chris, I think you probably have witnessed that.
Those all the time. Yeah.
So I think North Carolina is in a great position. We're always benchmarking what our neighboring utilities are doing. I will say we have talked at length with our neighbor to the north in Virginia, Dominion. They have seen a tremendous amount of data center growth. And so we're trying to take lessons learned from them. We're also seeing a lot of growth to our counterparts in the South. I think of Southern Company in Georgia and Mississippi. A lot of the data centers are looking predominantly at the Southeast, also all across the company. We're continually benchmarking. One of the things that we're learning is we do need to build into our contracts and tariffs for these large load customers protections for the rest of our customers.
Sure.
So we're starting to put in penalties and upfront payments to ensure that if they say they're coming
Right.
and then they don't show up, the rest of the customer base is not left holding the bag to pay for that infrastructure we're building to meet their needs. And so we're continuing to benchmark with other utilities, but North Carolina's in a great place.
Yeah. So even when we're talking about energy, it's hard to discuss economic development without the topic of workforce. I know Chuck hinted at that a little bit in his remarks. It is something that Institute for Emerging Issues has focused a lot in the past. Help us understand how workforce fits into how Duke Energy is going to meet this moment in terms of all this new energy demand, all this new energy deployment. You're going to have people here making all that possible in the middle of a labor market that still can be challenging for even a fast-growing state like North Carolina.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things I love about the energy industry is we have pretty much a job for everybody out there. Whether it is being a line worker or a customer service rep, we have IT, cybersecurity specialists, we have lawyers, we have HR professionals, we have environmentalists, we operate, 1,000 miles of lakeshore in North Carolina. A lot of the lakes in North Carolina were built for our power plants. And so we've got something for everyone in the energy industry. And I think I was reading an article the other day where energy employers are forecasting 32 million people are going to be needed in the energy sector over the next decade.
32 million.
32 million, and this is across the country, and think of whether it's line workers, engineers, construction workers. We really need to focus on training that next generation of workforce. Sure. And so at Duke Energy, one of the things, we're so beneficial here in North Carolina. We've got fantastic universities right here at NC State. All of the engineers and programs that we have, we hire a ton. But we also need to focus on those craft and technical skills. And we're partnering with our local community colleges. We have great line worker programs that are already out there, and line workers can make a great income. It's a wonderful job. We're also trying to pivot to put in place programs for working on different technologies, whether it's battery storage, electric vehicles, solar, really training that next wave of the workforce.
Yeah. And I mean, public policy probably plays some role there. I mean, private industry can do a lot of this, but a little bit of help from the public sector certainly can accelerate some of these efforts. You've got some people here in the room that represent either state, local, maybe even federal policy. What can those folks be thinking about from a public policy standpoint that's going to help Duke Energy in this particular moment that we're facing, whether it's on workforce or just this overall landscape of greater demand than we've ever seen?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Chris. One of the things I will say is really putting in place sensible policies. I think sensible policies can help further the objective of meeting this growing demand and all of the infrastructure that we have to build. We also, I think, one of the things that I can point to is maybe doing some permitting reform. We need to get permits for just about any type of infrastructure we build, whether it is a substation, a transmission line, or a new generating resource requires permitting. We need it to be efficient, and we need it to be effective. So really working with, and we've got to get permits at the local, the state, and the federal level for all of this infrastructure. So really streamlining that permitting process is one thing that I think could help us meet our goals in this state.
Yeah. Speaking of federal, we originally had scheduled this forum for a few months ago, so I'll tweak the number here, but we are now, I guess, about 4 months into a new presidential administration and a new Congress. A lot of guessing around what the future policy landscape looks like, and the energy sector is not exempt from all that, right? There's a lot of guesses as to where we're going to land as a country when it comes to energy policy. Care to hazard any guesses on what you think happens here over the next remaining, I guess, 3.5 years of the current administration?
Yeah, I don't know that any of us can predict that, right? It's changing probably hourly, But here is what I'll say. Our focus at Duke Energy hasn't changed. We're focused on providing reliable, affordable energy to our customers. And we need to stay focused on that in order to meet the goals of the state and the goals of our community, and really being able to keep the lights on. So we have to remain focused despite all of the politics and policy changes. We're focused on those 3 objectives.
That sounds like a good plan. Last question, and we'll bring Sarah back up here on stage. One more prediction. So fill in the blank. We'll have the next Emerging Issues Forum here in a little less than a year, but a year from now, North Carolina's energy landscape will be blank compared to where we are today.
So I would say a year from now, North Carolina's energy landscape will be even more interesting than where we are today. I think we're going to see a lot of things happening. I will put in a plug. We've got a new resource plan that we'll be filing with the commission early this fall. So exciting time to be in the energy industry. Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's give Kendal a warm round of applause for her time today. Thank you so much.